Hi everyone, thanks for subscribing to my channel and thank you for everybody who continues to share my videos. I'm very, very appreciative to everybody who continues to share my videos. And also thanks for all your comments. I'm very grateful for them. And please leave a comment on today's topic that I'm talking about as well, because I'm very interested to hear all of your points of view and opinions on what's going on. Now today I want to speak about the war in Ukraine and specifically about the Irish political response and what's been going on behind the scenes with the Irish political leaders. Now, this is very important because, in the context of the Munich Security Conference last week, we saw the comments by JD Vance talking about Europe equalising its support for Ukraine, for instance, and America looking for peace talks in Ukraine. Now, this is important because what they're driving towards is more militarism in the European Union. Currently, there's 100,000 US army members in Europe. There is a myriad of military bases all across Europe as well. And there's no news of those being pulled back from Europe. Here in Ireland, we've seen the use of Shannon Airport, for instance, by US warplanes for many, many years, and many illegal wars on their imperial destruction in countries in the Middle East, such as Iraq and Afghanistan, to name a few, and Libya, and we can mention Syria as well. But what's important is the Irish political response to this. It's very important because last weekend at the Munich Security Conference, Micheal Martin was due to meet Volodymyr Zelensky, but Zelensky stood him up. So what did Micheal Martin do after 2 days in the Munich Security Conference? Came back to Ireland, had a cabinet meeting on Tuesday and decided to unilaterally give over another 50 million euro to Ukraine. You really could not make this up. This is over 130 million euro that's been handed over to Ukraine in the last 3 years. Now, Ukraine, we know, is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And what's very interesting with all of this is the fact that a number of weeks ago, Zelensky himself said over $100 billion that was given by the United States, he doesn't know where it is. Isn't that interesting? He doesn't know where the money is. But yet, Micheal Martin, after getting stood up by Zelensky, comes back to Dublin, has a cabinet meeting, and signs off unilaterally on another 50 million euro to Ukraine. This is at the same time where we had a men's shed in Nina that was closing down because it can't afford its rent. So many basic services around our country are being destroyed. But Micheal Martin can bow down to his masters and van der Leyen in Brussels by signing off on another 50 million euro to one of the most corrupt countries in the world. You really could not make this up. And what's really, really important with this in the context of the European response, they've been trying to beef up their military and their military industrial complex in Europe. Zelensky said last week about the drive towards a European army. Now, what's really important is Micheal Martin's response to this, because he has said that there should be a just, sustainable, and durable peace, and they remain steadfast in their support of Ukraine. Now, also, if you read between the lines of all his comments on this, he also said we should now accelerate the process of Ukraine joining the European Union because it has undertaken many reforms. How can it have undertaken many reforms when we see one of the most corrupt countries in the world? Of course, BlackRock will move in to hoover up and make huge profits when the peace talks, I'm sure, are up and running. But what's really, really important to note with this is the whole response by the European Union. Back in 2021, there was a European Partnership Summit that had a number of countries invited, such as Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. And Micheal Martin was attending to that partnership summit. And this has always been the drive towards moving towards the neoliberal agenda in Ukraine as well. And this is very important to note because who will profit? They talk about values and freedom and democracy. But what's really important in the context of Ukraine that people should be aware of is that they've banned the opposition, political opposition, banned elections. We all know about the constitutionally they brought this law in to ban elections during the time of war. But of course, we know many other countries all had elections during times of war. So he's overstayed his welcome at this stage. His approval rate in Zelensky are very low. And at the same time, what's important to note is that he himself was named in the Panama Papers. Surprise, surprise. But Micheal Martin handed over another 50 million during the week. Nothing to see here from the Irish political establishment into the money laundering washing machine that is Ukraine. Now, as well, churches have been banned and political opponents have been jailed. This is interesting because there's always been a Bandera element in Ukraine. We know about the involvement of the ultranationalists and neo Nazis with the Azov regiment and battalion in Ukraine as well. But that's all gone under the carpet now when we're talking about the whole fight for freedom and democracy. Nobody talks about 14,000 people who were killed in the Donbass region as well. Of course, we don't mention that because that goes against the narrative. That's against the values and the freedom and democracy that they keep pushing down people's throats rather than standing up for peace and the interests of ordinary people. Now, what's important with Micheal Martin, as I said as well, is the Irish political response and the Irish military response, because Martin has said there should be security guarantees, and it is important. And just to go back to the context of the United States, because even Macron, Starmer has said there should be a US backstop. Pete Hegseth, the US Defence Secretary, has said that he wants to make NATO great again. So the idea is to boost up the military industrial complex in Europe. Of course, while the US pivots towards China over the next number of years. And this is what it's all about. Spend more of our euros on bolstering up, inverted commas, defence. You couldn't make it up. So it's this narrative about peace through strength, which is absolute just nonsense. And especially in the context of Ireland, a country that's never colonised anybody or occupied anybody, in terms of standing up for neutrality, which has been eroded day by day by the Irish government, dragging us into the NATO Partnership for Peace, dragging us into all these EU battle groups, and talking about these words. And even they went to war on their own citizens with Timmy Dooley, the Fianna Fáil government TD, who said that the Irish state should be battle ready, and he advocated the use of water cannons on people who are protesting because of the amount of immigration taking place in Ireland as well. You really couldn't make this up. So really, they're looking at the existential threats or threats from beyond the borders, when you think most of the threats are actually domestically in terms of the policies of the state that are being sold out to Brussels. And what's important is that a number of years ago, there was a report on the Commission of the Defence Forces that came up with a number of recommendations about improving the numbers in the Defence Forces and pay and so forth as well, which is very important. But also, this noted to move towards a reorganisation of the Air Corps. Now, what's very interesting with this is that they've commissioned a Pentagon group, an Institute for Security Governance, that's based in Washington, D.C. Surprise, surprise. Last year, Micheal Martin was at the Atlantic Council with all those warmongers talking about bolstering up our so-called defence. And the drive is towards the Air Force. Now, we know already that the RAF control the Irish airspace, which is absolutely unacceptable as a neutral country. We shouldn't have any hand like our part with a colonial power that's next door to us. And we know about the occupied 6 counties within our Ireland as well. Now, what's really important with this is that they've used the Pentagon to move towards this. And the Pentagon, of course, this group, the Institute for Security Governance, is an important group because this is all about advocating US policy. So you couldn't make it up. It's all about this bigger imperial project, and that's what's really being pushed through the European Union, through the United States as well. And this comes in the context of the 600 million that was spent on armoured vehicles. We see the drive towards the air, sonar, radar usage as well, and the talks of the subsea cables and the threat of cyber attacks. Now, there was cyber attacks in Ireland a number of years ago. Of course, that was a criminal gang, but they'll say it's a terrorist attack. You really could not make this up. Like, Ireland should be using our voice for peace. Like, we've had a strong and proud record of standing up for Pacific settlements and international disputes. But the problem is now we have political leaders in Ireland that are more interested in travelling the circuit of Europe, going to Paris, going to Munich. Harris today is in Johannesburg at the G20 meeting in South Africa. While we have huge domestic crises in Ireland, we have a housing and homeless crisis, health crisis, we have issues around immigration are absolutely catastrophic around the country. We've seen the crime, chaos, and the out of control disaster we've seen throughout our country as well around that. That's not being addressed. We have a multitude of issues here, but these people are more interested in handing over our public money to their bosses in Brussels and warmongers and corrupt leaders in countries. So it's very interesting, but what's really happening is a slow erosion of Irish neutrality. We need to have a real strong discussion on what neutrality looks like in the context of not being part of any military alliance. They've softened up this approach over the last number of years, and in particular there's been incursions of warships into Irish ports for many, many years. That has gone unremarked by the media, unremarked by the general public, and people are struggling with basic issues such as keeping their head above water day to day with the cost of living disaster. businesses closing down as well all around Ireland. But what's really important with this is that the political leaders have more interested in bowing down to their masters in Brussels and the masters in Washington DC and other countries than serving the interests of ordinary people. We need to bring power back, take power back to our communities, take sovereignty back, and have a say in the policy of the state, which is in our constitution, much the same as seeking pacific settlements to international disputes. So please use your voice to speak out, and thanks for everybody who subscribed to my video. And please leave your comment on this video today as well, because I'd be glad to hear your point of view on what's going on and in terms of the drive towards peace talks, for instance, in Ukraine, and how that develops over the next period of time. But it is important to understand what's going on behind the scenes, in particular to the Irish response, because a lot of this won't be reported upon by the Irish media or put into context in what's going on in the bigger picture. So thanks a lot for the support. Really very appreciative, and take care. See you all soon. Slán. Take care.